Welcome David Darcy to our Gathering Heritage project. And David was born and bred down the quay, and that is the way that Dundalk people talk about the quay, just down the quay. Would I be right saying that, David?
Yeah, down the quay, no matter where you go for some reason or other, anywhere in Dundalk, you always go down the quay. I've never heard of anyone going up the quay. You go up the town, but you always went down the quay. Out to Fatima. Over to Hill Street.
Over the bridge.
Over the bridge, over to Hill Street, but down the quay is the phrase into town.
Now, in my opinion, that you would only go down the quay if you lived there or if you worked there, because there was nothing down the quay. Am I right saying that?
Well, I mightn't say there was nothing. You had the harbour, of course, and you had all the shoe factories that were down there. The coal yards are part of the harbour. Where else then? Because where we lived there, we had our own places down the quay. So we had the hatchery, we had the Tower Road, we had the big yard, and we had the old military barracks as well.
What was the hatchery?
The hatchery is... I'm assuming it was might have been something to do with the mill, or again, maybe it was actually like a chicken farm, for want of a better way of putting it.
Years ago.
And it was, do you know where John Shorts is now, the higher place? Yeah. Well, before John Shorts was there, it was a big old like warehouse type building, and it was always called the hatchery. And I suppose if I had been thinking right, I might have sort of Googled the hatchery in Dundalk, but we'll save that for another day. Like, you could put that on as an addendum later on. But the lane, we used to sort of actually climb into the hatchery and play on all the floors and climb up all the walls and all of that. And the lane between the hatchery and the Greenough Railway Saloon, that was a great place for playing football, So
still is. I see kids still playing down there.
Well, I have to say I'm delighted to see that there's kids still playing football.
Because I come round in the car and there was two kids playing there, and I had to stop the car for to pass them. Yeah. Now, where does the quay in you're a local in the quay, so right. Where does it start and where does it stop? Because you have places both sides of it, but where does, in your opinion, right. Everyone has a different opinion when it suits them, So where do you think it starts?
Well, it would start at the windmill and it would end at...
Welcome Anne McIntegrity to our Gathering Heritage project, and I suppose you're probably better known as Anne Smyth.
Yes, that's correct, Harry. I'm Anne Smyth from Seatown Place. Daughter of George and Rita Smyth that started the pharmacy down there in 1965.
Is it that long ago? 1965?
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to believe. 53 years ago, I think. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your mum and dad before we talk about the pharmacy. Where did they come from?
Mum and Dad had an actually very interesting story. Mum was born on the Red Barns Road and my father was born in Castlebellingham. And Dad left school at 14 and went to work in the GNR, as many people did in Dundalk, as an apprentice boilermaker. He was the eldest boy of a large family of Smiths known around the town. And Mum came from a small, quiet poor farming family on the Red Barns Road. Her mother used to sell turkeys, would rear a few turkeys at Christmas.
And would you be selling them maybe above at the square?
Well, funny, recently we came across a letter that my mother received when she was in Africa. I'll come on to that later. And where her brother wrote to her to say her mother had passed away while she was away, but you'll be glad to know she sold the turkey before she passed away, and she went into Brady's at the square and had a quick one before she went home. So it was a tradition, obviously, that so they felt she was in a happy place when she left. But anyway, so Mum and Dad met, and Dad, along with two other pals, a Paddy Dowdle and a Desi Perkins, they saw the end of the GNR coming, and they decided to seek adventure abroad. And the three lads left Dundalk, bound for Zimbabwe.
That was a big thing at that time, man, wasn't it?
Huge thing now, and I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I know, one of those men stayed his life out there. And they are both Dundalk families, so the families will probably know that story themselves. But the three of them headed off. Dad already had a sister living in Zimbabwe, so possibly that was the reason they went there. His sister was married out there with 2 children, and her husband died tragically in a motorbike accident. So Dad went out to see how she was, and she ended up marrying her husband's brother, as they did. He went out to see how she was as well, so she settled up with him, and she lived her life out there.
Because there was somebody there, he'd never think of going to
Possibly
Zimbabwe.
so, but the 2 boys went with him, so and they worked on the railway. They were in big demand over there, so they spent a few years there, and then Dad came back and he ended up working in Crewe in London.
To welcome Damien Keenan to our Gathering Heritage project.
It goes back to 1645, the present building. But that possibly could have been the second. They say it's the second castle on the site. But the reason why that happens is back in those days, what happened was well, the Irish, first of all, for Castleballingham is Baile on Garlónig, which is Garlandstown. So that must have been the family in the area, was Garlands. And they would have built, say, a tower. And the next generation will build another tower, and the next generation will build add on. So that's the way, like the castle
built up.
Like it's like I don't know, like a project where you start and it takes maybe 50 years to build it. So God knows, like anyone doesn't intentionally start to build their house or their castle and say it's going to take me 50 years to build it. You know, it all depends on what builder you have at the time. But that's. It goes back to 1645, the present building.
Now, you mentioned that you were in Dublin and you came when you were 1. And what, did your dad intend to buy the castle? Well, how did that work out?
He looked at several opportunities at the time.
What did he do, by the way?
He had a couple of shops, 53 North Strand Road in Dublin.
Doing what?
It was like a store, general store, with an off licence. So you'd come in and he used to bottle his own Guinness and do all that. And they had their own, like he technically was, we were always told he was a butcher by trade.
And so, why did he pick Dundalk?
Well, I know he looked at the time, the site where the Green Isle Hotel is in Dublin.
He wanted to get into the hotel business.
I think so. I think that was the next progression for him. Like he had 2 shops, so he wanted to expand. And I think tell you what, it probably was just the opportunity at the time.
But was there a hotel, a restaurant
in the castle?
And bed and breakfast never in when he bought it? Or did he do it himself?
Well, the family that had it then was called Meehan's, and Mr. Meehan himself, he was captain. I think he's a captain was his rank, maybe even higher, in the submarine corps, and that's what he had at the time. So that's gone back. Well, that would be back in the 50s, and then when he retired.
Listen to the full interview on www.gatheringheritage.com.